Role-playing games aren't as interesting if the only social interaction is you begging the monsters not to eat you. So this week I decided to start defining the town, how it'll function, and creating NPCs that you'll interact with. Howdy, and welcome to Game Endeavor, where I post weekly devlogs for my game Zoe and a cursed streamer. The NPCs in my game are going to be a big focus of the gameplay. You will be interacting with these characters frequently, so throughout the development of this game, I will be expanding their stories and making them unique and interesting. With the help of my stream, we've created several fantastic NPCs that I drew while we discussed things that made these characters unique, such as their backstory, odd quirks, and characteristics, which I'll be sharing with you as part of this devlog. We created several characters for which I drew 3. I attempted a 4th but had a hard time getting him to look how I wanted. Of the 3 that I drew were a butcher, the village witch, and a shipwrecked Viking. The witch seems to be everyone's favorite, so we'll start with her. Right off the bat, you can tell she isn't all there, and it only gets worse. She's a young lady that lives on the edge of town. She's not shunned by the townsfolk as is common in many RPGs. Instead, they are very thankful for her assistance because she often cures their ailments and aids them in minor ways, though they're a bit cautious of her due to the tendency for her magic spells to backfire. She is not a powerful witch, far from it. In fact, she can only cast low-level spells, and often these will fail, which only makes the situation worse. Any had some fun with this by making a gif of the witch popping a smokescreen spell when she no longer wants to talk to you. Even though the spell fails, she still stops talking and pretends as though it worked until you leave, ignoring any attempts that the player may make to get her attention. I say she's a favorite because the community has already made several pieces of fan art for her. Zodic made the first one during the same stream that we designed her, and after that we received several others. Marrero has made some really cute ones that I've enjoyed, one that even became a Discord emoji, but he also posted one that I can't show. We also designed the Butcher NPC, who you will be able to sell monster loot to for an increased profit. The Butcher is a large round man that is bald by choice and bearded by hobby. He may look intimidating at first, but he's the biggest softy in the game. He loves to cook and dreams of being a chef, but due to being bullied as a child over his passion for baking, he chose what he thought was a more manly profession instead. But he still likes to surprise his loving wife with the baked goods that he makes during his free time. Him and his wife have a loving relationship. He mentions her frequently in conversation, and she is just as crazy for him. She even made the apron that he always wears, and she put a big red heart on it just for him. We also have some fan art of the Butcher, which has already been compared to me. Personally, I don't see it, though this is hilarious. I do love cheese. And then there's the short and grumpy Viking. We didn't really develop as much of a backstory for him yet, but I still believe that he is an interesting character. He's very short, which instantly makes him lovable, and he has a big head with an even bigger chin, though his beard covers most of this. Part of me wants to somehow make a scene of him without his beard just to show how goofy he looks, perhaps as a flashback when he was a baby. He crashed his Viking ship onto the nearby shore, so is stuck in this town until he can gather up enough wood to repair his boat. To achieve this, he decided to become the town's lumberjack, where he gathers wood for their construction purposes and keeps whatever he can for himself. We also tried to make a merchant, but that didn't turn out quite as well as of writing the script, but he still has some very interesting quirks about him, and one that will even be a fun gameplay mechanic. The merchant is a young wayfarer that travels the world trying to peddle his wares. I say trying because he's not very good at it. In fact, you can buy goods from him cheaper than anywhere else in the game, because he lowers his prices so that people will like him. Despite the fact that he's not a great merchant, he still tries his best to look the part by wearing fancy eccentric items such as the big fancy hat and gold trimmed shoes. The interesting mechanic that I mentioned earlier is that the player can find odd clothing in the world as they explore. These items will serve as collectibles, and if you sell these items to the merchant, then he will mention that he really likes these, and the next time he comes to visit, he'll be wearing the item that he purchased from you. There were several other NPCs that we discussed during this stream as well, but I think that's enough character design for now. I will save those for another devlog. I also wanted to start working on the town and getting a feel for how I was going to handle this. The town is going to serve as the central hub for the game. The player will be spending a lot of time here interacting with the NPCs, buying from shops, and even building their own house where they can stash their loot and supplies. So I wanted the town to feel nice and cozy, lived in not only by the NPCs but also by the player as well. I attempted to draw a house, but this did not go so well. I knew I could have improved this through several iterations, which is something that I highly recommend to the devs watching this. Don't just go with your first attempt, especially if you're learning to do something new. Do several iterations if you have the time, and then pick your favorite one. However, while doing this, I had another idea for how to do houses. Instead of drawing each individual house where you open a door, step through whatever dark abyss awaits you on the other side, and find yourself in a new scene meant to represent the interior of that house, I thought perhaps I can instead build the houses in the actual town scene. Have them as walled-in areas that you can enter, and when you do, the roof vanishes to reveal the interior of the house. The reason I like this is because I think it would make the village feel more immersive. Instead of being isolated into a separate scene away from everyone else, you're still there, existing in the town with the villagers. This makes it easier for everyone to exist together at once, and thus I think lends itself to a better role-playing experience. I created the walls of the house by breaking it into two different parts, the top and the bottom of the wall. The top of the wall works similar to any other auto tile that I've been using, like the dirt or the shade in the forest. Usually, I'll use a tool that turns a standard tile set into a complete tile set, allowing me to place tiles more flexibly. However, this requires the tiles to follow a specific set of rules that these walls will not be able to follow. So currently, I'm having to build these walls by hand, which is why I don't have a full set currently. This isn't a problem for me because I never intend to place a 2x2 of walls. However, if in the base building mechanic I allow the player to place their own walls, then they could place the walls incorrectly and break the auto tile. So it'll need to be fixed before I can include that mechanic. The base of the wall needs even less auto tiles because it only gets placed in such a way that it'll never have its centered down bit mask enabled. A bit mask in an auto tile is the true false flag that tells the engine if a tile is bound to an adjacent tile. As you can see here with this state-of-the-art demonstration, notice that all of the orange is globbing up as one cohesive area. This is because the orange represents the direction that an adjacent tile can be found. So basically, I need a lot fewer tiles for the base of the wall, since there's a greater restriction on how they'll ever be placed. You may also notice that many of the objects are placed freely in the world, rather than being snapped to a grid. The main reason I'm doing this is because I want the player to be able to place items in the world without having to snap them to the grid if they don't want to. Since I'm going to allow the player this freedom, then I may as well take the advantage for myself to make the town look even better. I'm taking a bit of a risk with this idea though, because it won't be as performance friendly as using a tile map. This is especially important considering that the entire town is going to be open and having people moving through it. So I'm going to need to put this idea to the test and see how well it holds up. But I think this should be fine so long as I keep the objects simple. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this devlog, then be sure to subscribe and ding-a-ling that bell so that you will get notified for the next one. I post a new one every Saturday, live stream every Tuesday, and I will see you in the next one.